My father was 50 years old, I was 25. When I was 9, he left our family. My divorce with my mom was difficult. She was awarded primary custody of me and my siblings, 23 and 20 years old, respectively. We did not want to communicate with my father, and my mother only encouraged us to do so, as her and my father's relatives created an environment where we did not want to spend time with him. Despite his efforts, our relationship remained strained, fueled by my mom's negative remarks about him. The situation worsened when my dad introduced us to his then-boyfriend, now husband Seth, 2 years after the divorce. I did not like Seth, as I saw his figure as the reason for the breakdown of my parents' marriage. I was extremely rude to him, to the point where he stopped showing up at home on our visits. This continued until they got married. My father warned me that if I didn't start respecting his husband, I would no longer be invited to his house. This further deteriorated our relationship, and I stopped going there completely. Our relationship seemed to finally end when I asked only my mom to walk me to the wedding. My dad didn't say anything, but after my wedding he stopped making an effort to communicate with us. Over the years, I see him less and less often, although he shows up at special family events. Mostly he and Seth are traveling or spending a lot of time together. Last weekend I decided to visit my dad and his husband Seth. They had a family barbecue. Seth invited a few of his friends that I had not met before. At the party, I overheard my dad talking to one of Seth's friends. He expressed that he wished he had met Seth earlier, before his marriage to Jane. "Don't get me wrong," he said, "I love my kids, but a lot of things would have been easier if I hadn't tried to hide myself for so long. I could have avoided all the drama of divorce." Those words touched me deeply. I felt like he regretted our existence and felt like we had robbed him of his chance at happiness. For years I had felt the distance between us, and his words only confirmed my fears that he didn't want to be a father. Consumed with anger and resentment, I didn't hold back and expressed everything I thought in front of everyone gathered. I shouted that it was unfair to talk about wishing we had not been born for the sake of his personal happiness. My father tried to back down, but the words had already been spoken. I left and haven't spoken to him since. My siblings also took my side. My father has tried to call me, apologizing and claiming he didn't mean what he said. Recently, Seth wrote to me accusing me of childish behavior and calling our family rude. He claimed my father had finally found happiness, and his words made me question the appropriateness of my response. "If it wasn't for you and your family making his life a nightmare after his confession, think about it, life could have been easier for both him and you," he said. "After the divorce, if you had found common ground, things may have worked out differently. I can't imagine what a burden it is to have my kids hate me for something I can't control." Yes, Opie admits that she deliberately kept her distance from her father. She allowed that estrangement to continue, even as an adult. She excluded him from her wedding day. Opie, you can't demand unconditional love from a parent you've alienated at every turn. At some point, people have the right to pull away from you and live their best life without you. Seriously, why should anyone spend time with people who are morally and emotionally abusive to them? Opie is trying to compare decades of neglect and abuse to a single comment in a moment of honest criticism. She wants everyone to focus on that comment from her father while ignoring decades of abuse from the entire family. I'm glad this guy has found love. He deserves it. What this girl doesn't realize is that her father is a human being too, and his journey has been difficult too. It's time to grow up and get over your problems. Damn it, you're an idiot. Your father was treated very badly by your mother, her family, and his family. They were the reason you had no relationship with your father in the early years. The responsible parent, your mom, should have convinced you to meet your father. Your mom failed to do that. Your dad is gay, and it's not his fault. There is no need to apologize for the fact that he probably wishes he didn't have children because he thinks you will hate him and you will be better off without him. I can only imagine the horrible things that have been said to him over the years, considering you all blame him for the breakdown of the marriage because he's gay. You are hurting, you need therapy, and you need to stop projecting this onto your father. Next story. My husband and I bought a house 4 months ago. His friend and colleague, along with his wife and 6 children, have moved in next door to us. When we bought the house, it needed a lot of repairs. All the carpets had to be removed because of their unsightly condition. The walls were in disrepair, with holes and in need of repainting. However, my husband was putting off starting the renovations, We had just had a baby, and he didn't want to increase our worries. Nevertheless, he decided to start the renovations this week, right before the birth. I took on the role of general contractor. I have worked in construction since I was 15 years old, helping build houses, painting floors, and pouring concrete bases. I have considerable experience in this field. My husband, on the other hand, has never worked in construction, his experience being limited to working in restaurants since he was a teenager. I planned to do the walls and painting while he worked on the carpets. Once that work was completed, I intended to build the various shelving and storage in an H shape myself, including cabinets. During the evaluation process, we discovered the need to do some exterior work to prevent mold and moisture problems. My husband took it on, and I planned to build our bed. We are currently sleeping on a mattress on the floor since our stuff was destroyed in the flood before we moved in. I have built bed frames several times before. My husband has decided that I can't help him because of the baby and the small space, so he doesn't want the baby inside. He claims it would take too long to build. He went out and bought the shelving and bed frames at a much higher price than if I had built them. Plus, he bought all white paint instead of the one we picked out together because it's faster. A neighbor came over yesterday with her 5-month-old baby to see how things were going. My husband offered to help her, even though he knew it would upset me. She took her baby, placed him in my baby sweater, and started helping. I took the baby and went to my mother. Now my husband is upset with me. I don't understand why my husband tends to do everything himself, and I have voiced my frustration to him about not including me in the process. Instead of allowing me to help, he has given that opportunity to his buddy's wife, even though it was originally my task. He claims that I am overreacting emotionally. I know the reasons why he chose to leave me out of it. However, if it is acceptable for them to have their child in the vicinity of the repair work, that is their choice. Right now, I don't even want to come home. I am annoyed that he is accepting her help knowing my displeasure and that he is excluding me from a process I should have been involved in. It makes me feel powerless and deeply frustrated. Your husband seems uncomfortable with your ability to perform traditional male tasks. He seems to prefer you to do the childcare. You're going to have to compromise or decide to live like this. You're absolutely right. Yesterday, one of his friends who is also a general contractor wrote to me. He expressed his desire for me to learn from him, even though I am a general contractor myself by trade. In my opinion, his words seem unserious and even insulting. The lack of respect in his words was obvious. You should write him that you already have these skills and make a living doing this kind of work every day. That's exactly what allows us to buy this house. If he takes offense, let him, but you're not going to raise another child. Now I want to tell a different story. I'm 24 years old male. I have been dating a 23-year-old girl for about 5 months. Despite taking birth control, she became pregnant. I had no desire to become a father and suggested that she terminate the pregnancy. I also expressed my intention not to be involved in the child's life if she decided to keep it and raise the issue of DNA testing after birth. She decided to keep the pregnancy, even though we both did not have sufficient finances to support the child. This decision caused me frustration, and I stopped communicating with her after 4 months. Later, her friend informed me that the girl had lost the baby and was going through a difficult time. I feel sympathy for her physical and emotional suffering. At the same time, the outcome of the situation spared me the role of father, which brought me relief. In honor of this, I celebrated with friends to release me from possible obligations. It later came to my attention that my celebration was perceived as joy over her loss. This led to misunderstandings between her, her friends, and me. In reality, our joy was not about her loss, but about my personal release from responsibilities that I was not ready to accept. You're not an idiot for worrying, you didn't become a father. But the celebration as it happened was indeed inappropriate. Next time, it's better to celebrate the circumstances differently. Celebrate that you didn't become a father, but do it in a way that doesn't hurt others. It is important to remember that there are many ways to prevent unwanted pregnancies, and it is not just the woman's responsibility. If you don't want to become a father, actively participating in contraception is your choice and your responsibility. If it happens that someone gets pregnant again, it is important to be prepared. If there is an opportunity to apologize for previous actions, it's worth doing so. What you and your friends celebrated was perceived as insensitive to the feelings of the woman who lost the baby. In the future, if you decide to celebrate such an event, it's best to do so in a small circle without too much public attention. You celebrated a loss that was hard on your ex. She was grieving for a child that was important to her. This raises questions about your attitude and sensitivity to the situation. Learn to take responsibility for your actions and possible consequences. If you are serious about not wanting children, consider more reliable methods of contraception, such as a vasectomy. This will allow you to avoid unwanted pregnancies and the associated complications. My next story. My mom celebrated her 20th marriage anniversary with her husband John last weekend. They threw a party for all their friends and family. I was supposed to attend, but a few days before the event, I informed them that we would not be able to make it. The reason was that 2 of my children became ill. We live in another state, and traveling with the condition of the children was impossible. My mom advised me to wait until Saturday and see how the children would feel, hoping that their condition would improve. However, my children did not improve, and my youngest's condition worsened so much that he was hospitalized the same night of the party. We brought him home on Sunday. The next day, my mom called me to express her bewilderment as to why I hadn't done my best to attend the party. She suggested that their marriage anniversary should have been a priority for me. I explained to my mom that under the current circumstances, my children were my top priority. She expressed that celebrating such an occasion should have been of special importance. I reminded her that it was not the anniversary of my parents' marriage, as my father passed away when I was 6 years old. Although her current husband is a wonderful man and we get along well, she should not see this as a continuation of her marriage to my father. The reason I explained this to my mom was because after my father died when I was 6 years old, she stopped mentioning him. She didn't want me to ask questions about him. When she remarried, she wanted me to take her new husband's last name and agree to be adopted. My mom claimed that he was now my father and that mentioning my real father would be disrespectful to her husband and their shared life. She claimed that her husband was her one and only true love and that he had given her all of her children. In this way, she would erase my father from her memory. Sometimes she even argued with her family members when they remembered my father. They claimed that they loved each other before he died, but my mom would not admit it. My mom's husband honestly didn't care if I talked about my father or herself. But my mom was adamantly against it. She was upset when I gave my daughter the feminine version of my father's name. She was also unhappy that there was a picture of my father at my wedding. She really wants everyone to forget about him and focus on her current marriage. During this disagreement over my mom's marriage anniversary, after I voiced my opinion, she told me that she's been married for 20 years and I'm almost 30. Therefore, in her opinion, her husband deserves to be recognized as my father and their marriage should be my priority. She expressed shame at my, in her opinion, childish behavior and called me an idiot. You are not an idiot. Your children are your priority. It's obvious. Your mother acted strangely, which was evident even before you told me about how she was trying to erase your father from her memory. No caring grandparent would demand that you prioritize a celebration in their honor by putting it above the health of your children, especially when they need to be hospitalized. She's really being illogical. It's amazing how she accuses you of childish behavior while she herself makes a scene because you couldn't attend her celebration due to her children's illness. Who is really being childish here? Your mother needs to realize that the anniversary is her personal celebration that has nothing directly to do with you. Even if it was your birth parents' anniversary, your kids would still come first. It's strange to see parents in a new marriage trying to squeeze their new spouse into the role of parent and erase the memory of the real parent. What kind of world does she live in if she doesn't realize that parents should always be concerned about the well-being of their children, especially when they are sick? Expecting you and your family to undertake a long-distance trip with 2 sick children would be completely unreasonable, regardless of the occasion. A story that really surprised me. My wife and I keep separate finances. This has always been our practice, and for the most part, our earnings are about equal. We share expenses and household responsibilities equally. However, my concern is that I spend far more on her than she does on me. This is especially noticeable when it comes to dating, which certainly brings joy to both of us. However, it frustrates me that planning and paying for dates falls on my shoulders. This is something I mentioned to her earlier this month. I asked her to take me out on a date, which she did, choosing a nice restaurant. The evening went great, But when the bill arrived, she made no attempt to pay it. I asked if she was going to pay it, and her surprised reaction was obvious. I explained that since she had invited me this time, it was up to her to pay the bill. On days when I organize dates, I always pick up the tab. Although she eventually paid the bill, an argument broke out in the car. She feels that my demands for payment are unfair, but my view on the matter remains unchanged. We practice separate budgets, which worked for us during our 7 years of marriage until this one incident occurred. I am not left wondering how much she spends and how much she saves. She tends to go through extremes in both directions. I prefer to stick to my budget plan. You're not an idiot. I have absolutely no idea what bothers her unless she thinks men should always pay for dates. Try explaining to her that such beliefs are outdated. If she's not willing to pay in turn, it's not fair. Marriage counseling can help. After all, a third party will be there to explain things to her. Perhaps she's not comfortable paying for services. I don't care whose credit card is stolen or what strangers think. So when I plan dates, you expect me to pay, right? And when you plan, you want me to pay too, right? We split finances 50-50ths, but for you, my money is my money and your money is also my money. That kind of marriage atmosphere seems crazy to me, but if you're married, to each his own. I don't understand why you don't have a shared card for joint spending like dinner. Then everyone could put an equal amount into a date fund each week and use it when you go out together. That way you'll know for sure that the expenses are split equally and avoid arguments about money. Dude, wake up. When money is split evenly, it never solved the problem. You ignored it until you said, "Hey, that's not fair. You should pay your share." And she reacted negatively when you tried to discuss it. All I can say is, ignorance is bliss.